setting me up to disappoint. No pressure. That's really great. Well, I want to show you the state of medicine today. This includes psychiatry. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Gotcha. Do you have a headache? I'll see you in a month. Wow, and we wonder why our patients don't like us. So anyway, with that in mind, my name's Peter Zafirides. It is an honor for me to be here, especially following Fran, who I consider an idol, and the work that she, along with Dr. Sarno, have done has shaped my personal, but also directly changed my professional course as a psychiatrist. So yeah, I am, with humility, privileged to be here and add to the conversation. What I'm trying to do by this talk is not necessarily show you a method. It's simply to show you my method. And I think what we've all understood today is that there probably is no one method, and it's more about the relationship and being able to connect with the individual and they, you. It is in that part where the healing will occur, the absence of which it doesn't matter how good your technique is. It will never happen. So some thoughts on that and where I've come, at least with my journey with existentialism or existential therapy. So to tell you a little bit about my story, I happen to be a PPD TMS sufferer as well. The basics of existential therapy, where I have found it to be useful, and how I do that. But my approach is the product of mainly two individuals, including Fran and the entire team, when I say John Sarno up there, in terms of TMS, what we have taken, hopefully respectfully, as the baton with PPD in moving it forward, and Dr. Irvin Yalom, who is a major influence to me in existential therapy. With regards to my understanding of PPD, this is how I try to frame it to patients, that what we're seeing here in the pain that occurs from PPD is not neurotic. It is certainly not psychosomatic or imagined pain, but we need to see it as a survival-based refuge. The underlying pain that it's trying to protect against is imagined to be worse. And here is where you go. And it is in that way that people need, at least I believe, to see it. In that way, it doesn't demonize the patient or make them feel less than. This is what I resort to. I just have pain. And certainly we have seen that in psychiatry in the extreme with multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder based on trauma. A whole self is created that is walled off from the rest. But in that, I do believe, and at least for me, in understanding this, that it is more of a refuge and not something out of neurosis or less than in the individual. As I've been trained in the existential approach, I've just taken a little bit more, taken just a little bit step further to welcome my own approach, in addition to rage and anger, which I believe is still the anchoring emotions. Existential issues come up as well, and anxiety will come up. I don't know if you all have experienced this, but throughout my career, people have said, I don't know really what I'm angry at, right? But what is this anger, right? And again, it's not that anger doesn't exist there. Maybe they're doing a really good job of suppressing it. But over the years, being able to mold my own understanding of this with respect to the underlying theories has worked very well for me. The way I always relay it is as an existential onion. So the core are these deep issues that we have. And in this, the approach here in existential therapy, really we're looking at the human condition, these issues of our existence, our mortality, our meaning in life, our isolation, our freedom. So the same forces that drive the human being that I'm seeing are the same ones that are driving me, right? They're manifesting in this way for that individual, but in that, this is the fuel. So the underlying core are these ultimate givens of existence, and then the layers are the way we deal with them, the defense mechanisms, both the healthy and the pathologic that we deal with. So anytime we get close, this is where those feelings can get exposed, and anything that might bring it up, trauma, loss, a change in one's career, whatever it may be, peels these layers off, and that futile core cannot stay exposed very long. And it's not an accident that many existential philosophers have killed themselves, because if we look at this as the futility that we're born into the world alone, the only meaning is that which we create. We are totally alone. We have the freedom to do anything we want, and then we die. Right? So that motivates us very healthily to do a lot of things. But I see that a lot, not necessarily just in my TMS patients, but in my depressed patients. These issues of, is this what life's all about? Am I going to die living like this? What is this all about? I feel so alone. So all of that resonated with me to meld this kind of together. The problem here, and we're starting to see it, as was evidenced by my performance art here just a second ago, medicine has gotten it very wrong to this point, or is moving in that direction. And I would argue psychiatry is at the head of the line in getting it wrong. This overcompensation by psychiatrists to be real doctors by relying only on the biological and the biomedical is really is just very difficult, because if any profession within the medical specialties was to have time with the patient and talk with them, well, this is what we offer or are supposed to. So I think that we foster in medicine some of the isolation, the dismissal, the invisibility that I call it in our patients, rushing through. You're not Howard Schubiner, you're my pain patient at 4:30. And I already know how I'm going to treat you. I just need to know if you're feeling better or not. No more. Just that, all right? You're going to talk about don't tell me about your wife. Makes me think of Dave's slide there. It was good to know that I didn't miss anything important, right? Yeah, it was fantastic, right? So technique, everyone gets hung up about technique. I humbly give you this as my technique. This is a book that really, one of the most important books that I've ever read. Personally, every day gets a little bit closer. And what Dr. Yalom did at the time, there was a woman who could not afford to pay him for therapy. So he asked her, he said, would you mind over the next couple of years if I take notes on what I thought was meaningful in our session? You do the same though. And then we won't open it up, we'll hold them for a couple of years, and then I would like to look at them and see how much what I thought was or you thought was. So he did that, and guess what? They didn't even match. They didn't even come close. So what he found, and not surprising now as his career's moved along, technique or the intervention or the interpretation didn't account for a whole lot. Not that it was immaterial, it still is important, and we all study our own disciplines to help people. I'm not dismissing technique by any means. But what he found were the times where his humanity came through, when he exposed some of his own vulnerability, a struggle that he might have had with the health condition of a family member, or something about his past, or his feelings about the session, when he might have made her angry or happy. And the throwaways, as he called them, ended up being the catalyzing moments. So that doesn't mean abandon technique, but I think that certainly shows us how powerful the relationship is. That is first and foremost. And I think I've become better at what I do when I've introduced myself a little bit more into the sessions. Again, not inappropriate. I'm very aware of transference and countertransference, and existential therapy is an offshoot of dynamic therapy. It's not a new game in town. But just in that, I think that's what people need. because the person who comes in has been made to feel invisible their whole lives. Like they don't even matter in terms of why their pain is there. Just let me get to the next, here, you need an injection, you need a fusion, you need this. The patients will heal, sometimes despite us, right? You know, I'll say some things and I think, oh, this is going to be great. I'm just so good at this. But I'll ask people, you know, I kind of in this, I'll just say, well, you know, what did you think? You know, just please give me something, just that I'm on the right track. I really like that you talked about your son. You seemed human. All of that, yeah, and that's it. But I think what happens is we get so wired in our method and dogma and algorithms and how we're supposed to treat, but we're not necessarily getting people better. I mean, we have narcotic medications, surgeries, all these things that we're doing. Pain is still there. By every measure, we should have pain gone. I mean, it's not that we lack for theoretical ways to eliminate pain. Yes, yet it's still there. And it is abysmal and shocking, ludicrous. If you had an alien come down right now and listen to this conference, as they were saying, as the presenters were saying earlier, that there are no studies that show that surgery is effective for back pain. Yet we're doing surgery. So a Martian coming down on Mars, why are you doing surgery? What is this that's happening? So we see the forces that are there, right? Now, I'm not getting cynical, but you know, I had an individual who came in with chronic renal disease that needs a transplant, but because his brother had a history of a suicide, he was not going to be given a kidney. Not because of the risk there, but they worried about depression and self-care, which he's fully sound and able to. So they referred him to Cleveland because they didn't want the chance of their kidney success rates in transplantation to go down. So we've got all these forces that have nothing to do with the patients, but yet are affecting the patients terribly. All right, so there's so many things. Now, we have to believe in our patients, but we have to believe in ourselves. And I mean believe in ourselves in that patients will see right through you if you don't believe in these theories, in PPD, all right? They're just exquisite in finding every weakness or vulnerability. And in that, I think the assuredness has to come that you feel strong with it. For those of you that might have suffered or have suffered with PPD, you know when it shifted, as it did for me, a long period of time where I was feeling better, but still these exacerbations, maybe random or something like that. And then that moment, I can remember it, shoveling snow, and it might have been just enough exposure that I would have these periods, and then they didn't last weeks. They lasted either days or hours, and then they went away. And it was that day where I just said, no more. I'm going out there and shoveling. This is not dominating me anymore. But inside of me, that was the first time I really could say I believed it. And that took years. But in that, to be able to offer that assuredness to the patient is subtle, but it is so important. They're looking and they are so vulnerable, and they have every reason to doubt us because of every other clinician who hasn't been able to help them, that it is important that we are at least sure what we're doing, and the humility to say, I hope I can help you. I will do my best. And I'm not sure I can, but I'll tell you, I will do the very hardest I can to try and help you. So we need to get over ourselves. Now, I had to include an English study. This was great because it really shows here. This was an English study in 2013. I sent it out to the TMS support group back then. Almost 500 patients, and these primary care doctors or researchers wanted to see in patients who had acute pain, what were the most positive predictors that this acute pain would become chronic. They measured at 6 months and 5 years follow-up in measures of disability and pain report. The largest factor was physical. The more intense the acute pain, if you snapped your leg, probably going to last longer than if you twisted an ankle or injured a finger. But number 2, belief that the pain will become chronic. Belief, thoughts. No mechanism of action, belief. So Last night, Howard and I were talking, and I try not to get too emotional, although I laugh a lot in my sessions. But I try not to get too angry. As you see me, I almost went like this. But what gets me very angry is when patients come in and their doctors have told them that, well, you're just going to have to deal with having pain for the rest of your life. I apologize ahead of time for saying this, but who are you? We can't predict the weather 2 days ahead. So let me get this straight. You're going to take your own inadequacy and, one, not being able to have the maturity to acknowledge that you can't help this person, yet take that vulnerable person and project it onto them as if they're the failures. And then we wonder why people get cynical or don't get better. Right? You don't need special technique. You need to hear people. You need to be right there in with them, because they don't have those people, and they haven't had them very often in their clinicians, people that they will give trust to blindly without even meeting them. And they throw it away. Physician. And again, I'm not coming down on medicine in general. There's many things that are good, and most doctors do a great job. And I've got a little bit of a high horse because of it being psychiatry and psychology and stigma. But stigma kills. People are ashamed to go in, and they'll kill themselves. Or the shame or the uncertainty or the discomfort in our clinicians and being able to discuss it perpetuates these issues. So part of this is what we teach our patients. But part of it is also, at least what I think, feeding back to our patients how wrong they've been treated. Not coming from an elitist or narcissistic point of view, but to show them how those thoughts matter. They're critical. Studies like this show it. And the power that any of us have, as I was talking to Tony during the break, saying that the power of an individual who's been through this process and has recovered, power that that person has on another individual who's suffering, because the message that is sent there, concrete, real, is that this will end. It's not forever. And we need to send those messages as well. Might not necessarily have the roadmap exactly, but we need to let people know that. So as I said, existential therapy, it's not a new type of treatment, but as Freudian therapy was taking off, others had taken it just a little different way here. Some of the leaders in the field, Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, an unbelievable book, and existential therapy, Irvin Yalom. It really isn't a new therapy. The roots of it come from dynamic and analysis itself, but it is the interplay of stress and our way that we deal with it and manage it, and the conflict that comes from these givens of existence. Now, the four main ones. Is this an uplifting end to the day? We're going to talk about death. We're going to talk about isolation, meaninglessness, existential freedom, and then I'll bid you good night, right? So death. Death doesn't worry me that much. I'm not really frightened about it. I just don't want to be there when it happens, all right? And I think that that's it. How much of that death anxiety comes out certainly in our depressed patients, but I think where, as a cover, these PPD symptoms come up with some manifestation of that. What is this all about? What am I doing with my life? It's going to end at some point. Or if someone is dealing with a conflict or a loss of any point, that it triggers some of those deeper anxieties, and there goes the PPD pain or the TMS pain to help as a shield. Not because they're neurotic, but because they're human. Well, we do it too. I just happen to go on YouTube for about 2 hours and watch fail videos, to just chill out. But all right, it's pain, right? Don't you? They're great. Or wake pranks. Oh my God, those are so good. Love those. Now, plus is we're conscious, but the downside is we're conscious, and the reality is there, right? For most of us, it motivates us greatly, right? Why we marry, why we have kids, why we are filled with gratitude that we are right here, right now, and enjoying the minute because we don't know when it will be taken away. Not all bad. But we're facing that on an ongoing basis, and certainly we see that in psychiatry in general with depression and anxiety, but these themes also come up in the PPD patients that I see. That simultaneous desire of, I know I'm going to die, but I don't want to die, right? Freedom. This is one of the most beautiful quotes I've ever seen. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In that response lies our growth and our freedom, right? And that's the space that we've got to get people to, right? That vulnerable point where what you're feeling is human, and how do we get you to bridge that gap, that this is not structural, that this is not physical, that this is your mind. It's scary, anything. It's the unknown, it's scary, but we can go there. And when people at least get there, without necessarily fully believing it, but at least acknowledge it on a very basic level, that's the beginning of the healing. Freedom can be negative, right? We've got 1,000 channels on our cable box. I'm probably going to pick 6. The thing I hate the most about Netflix is that front screen. I don't know what I want to watch. I can't. It's too much choice, right? But on the other end, if I only had ABC, CBS, and NBC to pick from, I feel like I'm being oppressed. So there's tyranny on one end and full freedom on the other end, and we all struggle with where those points are going to be, somewhere we settle that is unique to us. But certainly, these issues in life that bring up freedom and the absence of which, physical conditions, the pain itself of PPD, all of this can cause a person to feel very uncomfortable. It is during those traumas of loss, of death, and what have you, or change, that really make us very, very nervous. A brilliant example of freedom is Georgie. One person brought this together today, right? One person. And not to minimize, your role, Fran, but at all. With respect, I say this, but Dr. Sarno, one man, did that for millions of people. One man, right? We are all that powerful. It doesn't have to be that we're changing the lives of thousands of people, but just as Tony had mentioned, talking about that with a friend of his changes the way his friend sees it, and so forth and so on. And in continuing to talk, I think it also forces that realization into other clinicians. Not that we're going to get them to join on the bandwagon, but that we tell them we just refuse to have you disconsider psychological factors or put them on the back burner. It just can't happen anymore. All alone, whether you like it or not, all alone is something you'll be quite a lot. Quite a lot. And I think this is the hardest part, certainly within depression in my psychiatric patients, but also in pain. If I kicked my foot right now on the side of this desk, I can describe it to you, but I'm the only one who feels it. And it is that pain, both the pain that comes from PPD for whatever reasons, but then the pain drives it further because there's no way out. No one understands. There's nothing wrong with me. No one understands, but I'm in pain. And it just exposes that futility and slows down time, and it's a torment.
The worst one is they say it's all in your mind.
Right. I know, I love that one. Well, I guess technically it is. It is biologic, right, but, I can't. I get too, I'm nervous enough up here right now. But it is, obviously, it's that isolation in the world and the aloneness. And it's It's the suffering in addition to using the pain to guard against this isolation. So again, these issues of anxiety that we face, in addition to the rage and the anger, in my opinion, are what lead to the purpose of these psychophysiologic symptoms. Life is without meaning. You bring meaning to it. The meaning of life is whatever you ascribe it to be. Being alive is the meaning. How many think that's comfortable? Yeah. No. What do you mean? Yeah. Wait, the black hole started, Big Bang started at a point, but yet that point could be infinite. No. All right, so everybody wants answers, right? And that's where I think we have to be careful, at least as, I'll speak for myself, as a PPD clinician. I always qualify anything that I would do as an interpretation or an understanding, that this also, the limits come from my lack of ability to truly be objective, and it also filters through the realm of my experiences. I have an idea as to why you're feeling this way. And, not to be Zen or like Yoda, but the meaning itself in and of itself isn't the point, right? It's, okay, we find that out or we don't, right? What if it isn't, but for you, how do we know that's the meaning? This is the reason why you're in pain. But I think it's more important in the struggle between the two individuals, the clinician and the patient, the clinician who believes that this is valid, that is earnestly and with vigor trying to help the individual, that I think is the bigger deal here than the exact meaning for the pain, right? But meaning itself, we always struggle between trying to grasp and understand what this is all about, fully realizing that it may not be anything other than what just is, right? And whenever that happens in patients' lives, a death, an accident, an abrupt change to a job, and a divorce that comes suddenly, we suddenly are exposed to that. Right there, anything can happen on a dime. Wow. But how could that happen, right? But yet it can. And that's a very difficult place to be. And I think as that plays out symbolically in our emotions, certainly pain is one of the ways that individuals deal with it. If life is, and here's the other part too, the kicker, if it's not predetermined, then the responsibility, meaning, and purpose, that's all yours. All yours. That's it. And Frankl always said, the man's search for meaning is the primary motivation. So how do we as meaning-seeking creatures try and make sense of something, fully aware that there may be no meaning other than we create? And I know for everyone here, you're feeling, well, don't talk like that. Right? It's a little. I'm gonna need to have a vodka after this, but don't talk like that. And we can see that, especially in a vulnerable individual, a person who is exhausted with pain and disease and terrible stress, how that can evoke these stressors, and why would not one of the coping mechanisms be physical pain? This is what I try to live my life by. Every wall is a door. Emerson. We are the ones who choose what the adversity is in our lives, what it means, right? And that's really important, especially towards the tail ends of treatment, but even early on with individuals with PPD, TMS, is that you have the pain, but what will you do with it, right? Will you take it and own it as something physical, or will you take it over time, and I'll be there with you, to take it to mean it's a signal of something? Once we change the meaning on it, it can't haunt us. And I'll use my own example in that. I had the epiphany moment there with the snow shoveling, where I just said, damn it, I'm going to go out and do it. But then about 4 years ago, after the birth of our second child, George, a little leprechaun, we were walking down the stairs, and all of a sudden this ridiculous, it was amazing, like a sharp, it went down. I even had it in my mind. I'm just going to go look the dermatome, but I'm pretty sure it's C6. But anyway, so it's hurting, and it's throbbing, and it's tingling. And George is in my other hand, and I started laughing. I just started laughing. I said, no, oh, no, 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 you're not doing this. You are not doing this to me. Sarno taught me better. What this is that I'm angry. I'm angry that I've got to take care of these 2 kids. I'm angry that I'm not single anymore. I'm angry that I don't have more free time. I'm angry that I can't get on the internet and watch fail videos for 3 hours and drink. Not necessarily in that order. I'm not going to let you dominate here. And within a half hour, it was gone, right? So it is, once we change what that pain means, then everything starts to shift. And like that study showed earlier, the belief that we think it will be forever is one of the most likely reasons it will be forever. So it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we fairly, authentically, genuinely reassure our patients that this won't be forever. But you've got to be confident when you say that, or else you come off like a self-help video, right? So you've got to believe that, because that belief is what will transcend and make the person feel better, right?
How does the phrase go, we are our own doctor? We are in control.
I wish more doctors realized that. You know, because, you know, people come in and oh, you've helped me so much, you saved my life. I didn't do anything, right? You saw me for 6 hours in 1 year. How could I have possibly done it, right? But people know. And I think when I've been willing to release myself from some of that dogma that I am supposed, not that I'm not the expert, not that I'm diminishing my position, but that I need to hear the patient. That is first and foremost. And my goal is to diminish that barrier. Not that they don't see me as a doctor, but that they see me as a human being that is listening. Because I think in that, a lot is to be learned. And when patients make suggestions, whether it's for PPD and certainly in psychiatry, they're usually right. I don't like the way this made me feel. What about something else? You know, I really felt neurofeedback helped me. What do you think? Should I go again? So I listen to it and take it seriously, fully aware that part of the problem is because they've not been taken seriously, right? So yes, I think that we have to respect that. We need to be heard. Everything, I think all of communication, all relationship breakdowns come where people don't feel like they're heard. And we need to matter. We have to feel like there's some importance, that there's some relevance to us. And not that our existence is just real, that it is, but that it is meaningful for us. And I have seen, and this is where the medical profession needs to change, the invisibility that we continue to put forth in making the patient invisible, as if their description that day in the visit really is almost intrusive or delaying, obstructionist, rather than saying, let's sit down and talk. You can still accomplish the same amount, right? I have this great story. Oh, I can't believe this happened. A patient of mine brings me in this letter that the doctor had given her. It was the most atrocious grammar I've ever seen, and he scratched out stuff. He goes, you've been late this visit, and this is the last time I'm going to see you. And I'm not going to see your mother either, because you're always late. If you don't come in on time from here on out, I'm not seeing you again. This isn't anything personal. Is it anything personal? He typed it out in the session rather than telling her, and handed it to her and took off. Are you kidding me? This is where medicine has come. He typed it out right there instead of telling her. She's sitting there with a letter. He fired me. He was in the... He just fired me by letter, but he was in the session. Beautiful, beautiful. Something to be very proud of. Very proud of. The most important thing we can do is hear our patients. That's first and foremost. We have to be there with them. We have to make sure that they know we are there, that we believe them, and that we care for them. I was waiting for Howard to say it, because he said it last year, and it stuck with me the entire year from New York, that we love them. All right? And I don't think you have to go to a weird, inappropriate place to just say that, right? And it's not something necessarily I'm going to say, I love you. but that we have to have some level of caring and compassion for them, and recognizing the entirety of their struggle, particularly in PPD and TMS, that from the start, no one believes them. From the start, no one believes me. You know, you don't go into psychiatry if you want to get a lot of reinforcement about the validity of your practice. So it's not a big problem for me. So we can change these things. He who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. Don't close your eyes. I know this group will not close their eyes. And this is just my approach to it. If anything that we've learned today from the beautiful discussions is not only are there different ways to approach a TMS PPD patient within the psychological framework, but how much richness can come from those who aren't even in the psychiatric and psychological fields. So your role in it is relevant, irrespective of your training. It is your passion, and it is your care that will be the healing. I thank you all very, very much.